Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band Podcast. I am your host, BENEDIKT, and I'm here today with Jay Maas. If you don't know Jay, he's a producer, engineer, musician, entrepreneur. He really does it all in the music world, mainly the independent punk rock, hardcore sort of guitar, indie, I don't know what to call it, music world. And he's been a major influence for me over the years because I really think that his stuff, the stuff that he's worked on, always sounded phenomenal. I grew up listening to a lot of the bands that he's worked with, and I gotta read this list real quick because it's just so long. I have to read this. He's worked with bands like Half Heart, Bane, Counterparts, State Champs, The Story So Far, Verse, Propagandhi, No Trigger, Polar Bear Club, Title Fight, Carpathian, Strike Anywhere, Drug Church, Make Do It Man. The list goes on and on and on. This is not all. It's insane. And I always thought that his records had impact and punch, but also like an authentic sort of vibe to it that I just liked. And it was, I don't know what fascinated me about it, but I've been following him in his production career for a while just because I wanted to learn more about how he approaches things. Major influence. So a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I got to talk to him on my other podcast, the Outback Recordings podcast. So if you go to your podcast app and look for the Outback Recordings podcast, there is an interview, a conversation between me and Jay on there. And I'll put that in the show notes of this episode too, where we talked a lot about his career, the bands he's worked with, his approach to producing, mixing music. And we've also talked a little bit about something that was just in the works back then, or he had just started it back then. And that is Maastr.io. It's an automated mastering tool, an online mastering tool where you can upload your unmastered mixes. The AI masters it for you. You can then download it. And you can make revisions, you can change things, you can collaborate with your bandmates, you can collaborate with your clients if you're mixing for other people. So it's a collaboration platform and an amazing online AI-based mastering tool as well. And I know that there are a couple of these tools out there, and I was skeptical about it because most of them, at least the ones I've tried, I don't think are really good. So I was very skeptical, but I tried Maastr, and I got to say, I love it, honestly. I won't say much more now in this intro because we talk about it on the episode. But this was really the first time I felt like, yep, that works. That's awesome. And even better that it came from someone like Jay. So I was interested in learning more about it. I wanted to know what happens under the hood. How does it exactly work? Where's the benefit for people like you, self-recording artists, DIY musicians, DIY producers? Because I think it's a phenomenal tool for you. But I wanted to ask Jay about this, and I wanted him on the show to explain all of this because he can do a much better job at this than I could ever do. And my bottom line is just, I think it's a tool that enables more creatives to put out more work at a higher quality more often. It removes a barrier, it removes a bottleneck, it removes the sort of black art of mastering. And I think for that reason alone, it's super awesome. And yeah, so today I want to talk all about that with the amazing Jay Maas. So hello, Jay. I'm going to shut up now. Thank you for taking the time to do this today, and thank you for coming on to the show.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Very, very cool. So yeah, I was looking forward to this because we had a talk already on my other podcast a while ago. It's been like 2 years almost, I think, that we did this.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Yeah.
Yep. And Maastr was a thing back then. So we're going to talk about what Maastr actually is, but like it was a thing back then, but you just started, I think, when we did that. And we talked about it for a while, but I assume things have changed. So maybe you can give our people a quick introduction of you and like what you do right now and what Maastr is specifically.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as you did with your great intro, I'm Jay, and I've been a producer for almost 20 years now, full-time for probably like 17, 18 years. And yeah, as a record producer, I've learned a lot of things, and you can kind of call it my pandemic project, but I have had this idea for making AI and cloud-based mastering actually good, and I thought I could do it. So I started with like a local prototype, and I think when I talked to you last time, we were in our early phases. I think I would even call it kind of like a late beta. And what you could do with the platform essentially is like you could upload something, you could hit our AI, and it would spit out a great sounding master. What we realized though through like talking to our users is the platform's evolved now. Now it's a full collaboration, mixed note, sharing platform, and we've actually gone from one mastering algorithm to 9 because we heard back from people. We've had some great users, Dan Corniff, produce like Paramore and stuff. And then Jaime from Pierce the Veil specifically asked me if we could do like a darker, louder one, because while our original algorithm was great for rock, he was like, I'm working on some different stuff. And that kind of opened our eyes to the fact that we were like, you know what, like, yes, the first one we made was like my dream algorithm, but then we're like, yeah, like people are going to want some different flavors, and that can really empower people to experiment and work, with that with their mixes. So yeah, it's really been a fun journey. I've learned a lot about software development, as you can imagine. Yeah, and the platform's just grown, and we've got a ton of like really happy, stable users.
Awesome, so cool to hear. Like the one thing that I kept thinking about was like, this is not just something that you created and you sort of in the background, but you literally have your name on it. Like it's called Maastr with a double A, like your name. So, and you obviously have a big list of like credits, and people know you and love the work you've done. So you really can't afford to put out like a shitty product when it comes to that. Like it has to sound great. It's literally your name on it. So I was wondering, like, why do you think, what is it that makes Maastr different from like, let's say typical ones like, Lander, all the others?
Competition, sure. I would have to know how they approached their engines, and I don't know. I think part of me is I can't help but be curious if, because there's a lot of like open source limiters out there, and you could just totally take an open source limiter, apply it, give it some output, and I don't really know. That's not what we do at all. So when I approach this as a mastering engineer myself, one thing that I was realizing is that the input, the mix is really the variable, right? So like you never know what you're going to get. Like it could be, I don't know, it could be hip hop or it could be rock, but even inside of both of those genres, sonically speaking and dynamically speaking, it could be like totally different. But what I found is that through mastering records for a long time, not that there aren't some tasteful differences, and that's where like the different algorithms come into play, but that the output was far more static than how dynamic the input is. So like while I'll get God knows what to master, what I'm trying to do is I'm essentially trying to appease human biology, and that is to say like human hearing and knowing things about human hearing. Like the first thing everyone always talks about is like the Fletcher-Munson curves, right? Where we hear 3K first, and then as the amplitudes go up, the 3K starts to compress, which makes us feel like our low end and our high end are getting louder when it's actually just our ear's natural response. But how that translates to limited music and how there's like sort of a correlation with that, and just really understanding like how we hear, And I think when you sort of start to crack the code on like what the ear prefers, you now have something that you can kind of do some reductive math against to take a variable input signal and solve for it.
Okay, so that's interesting for various reasons. For one, I love the approach that you think it through. Like what do I actually have to do here? Like what because at the end of the day, it's all about how it feels to the end listener, and like they don't really care how it's been done. It's like, but it has to come across the right way. So it has to serve the song, it has to keep that original vision and all of that intact, and then it has to work for the end listener. And you kind of thought about how you could achieve that. The difficult part is though the part about what you said, where you have different inputs. They are always different, every song, every artist, every project, but you want to get sort of a consistent result. Not that everything should sound the same, but it all has to work regardless of what you put into it, basically. So that's to me
that is the difficult part.
Yeah, the difficult part, exactly. So if I'm wondering, when you say things like my favorite algorithm, what you said before, or like your favorite processing, or whatever you called it, like the first one that you started with, that is not a static thing, right? That also has to adapt to whatever you put into it. So how do you define your favorite thing? Is it a certain, like, what are you looking for? Like, what is it that you want at the end? Like, if you can describe
I can go pretty far. Yeah, I can go pretty far down the wormhole here. But yeah, so you're right. When I was saying what I was describing is when I'm, as a master engineer myself, there's certain dynamic conditions I'm typically looking for. And so we take and this is why you couldn't do what we do with a plugin. It's because you have to know what the entire picture looks like, right? So the first thing we want to do is we analyze the whole song, right? And then we start to map the entire dynamic and the entire sonic and to some degree like a stereo separation structure of what we're looking at. We need to understand like, what is this before we begin processing it, right? And then once we know what it is, we can start making then from those macro decisions, we start making more like micro decisions, and to the point where we actually like, not in a big way, but we do literally like make minor EQ changes like down to the sample. That is obviously something a human could not do. One might say it's completely unnecessary, but I think technology has unearthed like all kinds of new stuff, especially in our space, where we're like, oh, well, no, we never thought to do that before because you could just never do that with an analog chain. But like with digital processing, like you can do it, and like let's get better at this and let's try that. So
Yeah.
that's sort of like the macro approach. When we talk about like, what was my favorite thing, as someone who's very experienced in this field, I based it on what my sonic preferences are. Now, we could do an entire other podcast on exactly what I look for, like when it comes to a really great master, you know what I mean? And I think that might be slightly higher level than what we're doing here, but you can basically think of it as like, as a mastering engineer, if people aren't familiar, most of you probably are if you're listening to this, but like you're not like, oh, should I put reverb on the vocal, or we should distort the drums here or something like that. It's not that. It's like, how do I make this exciting and translatable across all playback devices? So we're looking at things from more of like a scientific sonic standpoint rather than should we add backup harmonies here standpoint,
Yeah, totally. I'm so glad you mentioned that, by the way, because I think before we go further down that rabbit hole, or that wormhole as you called it, like of what exactly happens under the hood, we should probably explain first why someone would want to use something like Maastr, because a lot of DIY musicians especially, and like home studio producers, they write a song, they record it, they mix it. It's sort of this. Some of them like separate the process, but in a lot of cases, it's just you start a project and at some point it ends, and it's not really clear where one thing ends and the next thing starts. And at some point, they just will make it loud, and that will be their quote unquote mastering, and then they're ready to release it. And so people might wonder, like, why do I have to send this off to someone when I think I'm actually done, and why should I do it like automatically, or should I go to a mastering engineer? Like, what's the difference? So maybe we should explain what that last step is. You already did it in a way. It's to make sure that it translates to all different sort of listening systems. But like, why can't you just in the DAW put a limiter on the output and make it loud and maybe do a bit of EQ adjustments? Like, why would anyone need this extra treatment at the end?
Yeah, well, so you can just put a limiter on the end if you want to. I don't recommend it, but you can, and I think a lot of people do. But I would say mastering is really strange because it's like some of my favorite records I've ever made. And it's this really strange phenomenon where I am a mastering engineer. I'm also a mixing and producer, all of that stuff. But I'll take my records a lot of times and I'll send them either to Maastr, which we've used for real releases, or to outside mastering engineers. And sometimes your objectivity by the end of a project, I would say actually a lot of times, your objectivity at the end of a project is kind of skewed. You're like so close to this project that, and like what you boosted and what you cut and all of that stuff. And then you just sort of like get to a point where like you're kind of creatively exhausted. And it is so nice to have something or someone entirely objective to just take it, and they get to have that like fresh eyes first look at it again, where they go, and they have no idea that you're nervous because you boosted 5K in the guitars. You might still be deficient in 5K in general. You just might be. And so like you send it to someone or something in my case, right? And like it just goes, oh, well, it needs more 5K, right? And it does not care about anything you did or anything like that. So that's a reason why you might start to trust that stuff and use that stuff, and why historically a lot of mixing engineers don't master their own stuff is for that exact reason. And I would say the other part of that is mastering isn't really very fun. So therefore, a lot of people don't spend a lot of time super learning it. I mean, for those of us who, where it is kind of fun, like it takes a special kind of psycho to like to really think that's cool. Yeah. But I would say that like mastering is really hard. And I think what you find is that people who specifically operate as strictly mastering engineers, most of the time, they're veterans in the industry. It takes a long, long time and a lot of experience to develop really good psychoacoustics, so you know what decisions to make and why. And it takes kind of doing like thousands of records to be able to say like, oh yeah, that whole thing is a learning process. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take the pain out of that and create something that actually sounds amazing, where it's like, like I'm going to worry about like making this song awesome. I'm going to make the chorus great. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to get the best snare sound. I'm going to do all of this stuff. And then just to have like an AI buddy that you can throw this at, and then it just does that not very exciting part, but is super integral to just the overall polish and output of what you put so much work into.
Yeah, totally. And that whole peace of mind aspect at the end, just knowing that something or someone is going to take care of that final step, and you're not going to miss something, like fuck it up like so close to the finish line, basically, which could happen. Then I mean, so that alone is worth so much to me, and I've always enjoyed, for that reason alone, I've always enjoyed working with mastering people and mastering engineers. Even if sometimes I got a master back where it was like almost identical, just louder. And I was still glad I did it, because then I knew, at least I knew there was nothing wrong with it, like nothing major.
It's affirming, right? Yeah.
Yes, and it's done, and you know it's done, right? And if you've worked with great people, you just know that now you can definitely put it out there. It's done. Somebody said it's done. It's approved, and that peace of mind aspect alone was always really cool for me. And then and just knowing that the fatigue or flying too close to it is not going to cause problems.
What we've heard back from our users, and something that like I personally experience because I use the platform every day as well, like is that what's great is, we talk about using an outside mastering engineer, and that feels really good. Even if what you get back isn't that different, it's very affirming, and you're like, oh, cool. All right. So I was on track. And like, that's really great. A really great benefit of using Maastr is that you can do that in 3 minutes, anytime you want, 24/7. So instead of like, because you know how it is, like, okay, you get the master back, like from someone, that you're paying probably a whole bunch of money to, who's like, here you go. And then there's that, like, I like it, but like, and then you have to like do that, like, is it worth it? I would like to hear a darker one. Oh, I would like it a little louder. Oh, I would like it a little brighter. I'm not sure. And you're like, this is good, but I kind of wish that. And then it's like, how much do I want to bug this guy? What's his schedule look like? When am I actually going to get this back? If it's going to take 2 weeks, it's not worth it. You know what I mean? So it's like all of these like sort of like workflow and like, oh, like the band's hungry for it. Oh, the label wants it, whatever it is. So that's, how do I put this? Like, that's very limiting. The other thing that's really cool is that as you're getting sort of close to final mixes and you're using the platform for your mix note revisions every day and you're uploading stuff every night, like you get to like bounce things off this as much as you want. And you get that same either affirmation. Well, you do get an affirmation either way. Cause I know when I get a master back and I was worried, like, I think the hi-hats might've been a little bright, but I don't know. And then you send it off and you come back and you're like, damn it. The hi-hats were definitely a little bright, right? So now it's like, that like right away. So now it's like something I do is I upload it, right? And then I'll be like, all right, I'm going on my coffee drive. So by the time I like go up and get my keys, get in the car, it's probably finished processing or very close. Then I grab my phone. We made the mobile experience like way better now, right? So it's just like, cool. Open up my phone and I just jam it in the car. I jam it in a totally different environment. I'll do things like my wife and my kid be in the car and I'm like, can I just put this on and just see what you think? And it's just like,
do that all the time.
Because this is potential. This is like potentially final, but it's like, I don't know, a fraction of the price and you just have it on tap.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Like I do that all the time actually with the family in the car and just annoying them with stuff that I've worked on just because I want to hear an objective opinion, like ideally of like non-musicians or engineers, and then stuff like something. What's interesting is sometimes things happen that like my 7-year-old daughter will say things like, "What did you say? It sounds softer or something, or it's like this sounds. Can you turn this down? Like this is annoying or like and sometimes." When I play an A/B, she doesn't really know what to say or how to describe it, but she'll feel if something is more aggressive or darker or brighter or something like that. And that's so super helpful. And especially in mastering and like even kids or like non-musicians, they can make out these differences in how things feel. And these are sometimes tiny differences between two masters. And it's a great way to do that. And so and you can do that with that app in a really, really cool way because as you said, you can just pick 2 different options or you can like upload 2 different mix versions that you made and then compare them quickly, stuff like that. So that really makes that easy. I want to say one thing though, and that was a question that I have for you, Jay. I've played around with it a lot now and I've mastered a couple of songs with it now and I love it. I really, really do. I compare it to my masters all the time and it's like, it's up there. I can totally use it. It's always a little different in a way, but not worse. Sure. So it works. Right. It absolutely works, and I love it. I love the results. There's just one thing, and that might be totally like personal preference, and I just wanted to let you know what you say. Yep. There's one thing, and that is you said the thing about the bright hi-hats. I always feel like when I have the neutral mode, like there is a dark, neutral, and bright thing, and then there's a loud, gentle, and quiet or something, or loud. I don't know what you call it. Normal, loud, and gentle.
Dynamics and 3 different darknesses.
Yes. And the loudness thing, perfect. Sometimes I use the loud, sometimes normal, sometimes gentle, everything. The other stuff also perfect. I just lean towards the dark side in this case because I always feel like if I set it to dark, it's like closer to what I put in a way. And I don't know what that is, but the normal mode sounds great, but it's always, or a lot of the times, quite a bit brighter than my mixes. And now I wanted to hear from you what you think why that is, and maybe I'm just not judging it correctly. Maybe it should be brighter, but I always, no matter what the mix is, I always have a feeling that it's slightly brighter, and even in the normal mode. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that because it's not bad, but it's brighter.
Yeah. Oh, good ears. I think that you're probably right. I think typically, I don't know, that might be coming down to like what my preferences were, but yes,
Yeah.
I've also had that experience. And it doesn't surprise me that you like the dark mode either. That's one of our newest ones, and we've learned a lot since. And that's a cool thing about this too. Like I can take user feedback and we can retool this stuff. You're not the first person to tell me that they felt like neutral wasn't exactly neutral, but yeah. And so the dark mode has some really cool new advanced stuff going on that does like what I call like the de-brittling, sort of like softening up things that could be edgy, like, and harsh or whatever. So I think it comes down to mixing style. So speaking of like my friend Bo, who plays in sales and he's a great engineer, right? Like he actually likes, like we made loud bright kind of for him because he was like, sounds good, dude, but I need it louder and I need it brighter. And I was like, really? You know? And so, you know, and I was like, okay. Yeah. And so, and like I said, like Jaime for Pierce, he was like, I need it darker, you know? And so I was like, okay. And so getting the feedback from like these like really like real world like pros has been really good. But some people live on normal neutral, which you're talking about, but you aren't the first person who said that they felt like normal neutral is a little bit bright. It also depends on the genre. So if you're producing music that doesn't have stuff like open hi-hats in it, that can be kind of bright. Just in general, like open hi-hats are always like the brightest thing in your mix. Like, especially if you're a rock or punk producer, for sure. But like, here's a weird thing. If you're using tight hi-hats, or if you have a darker mix, or if you're using electronic hi-hats or just electronic music in general, my gut tells me that you probably wouldn't find that setting to be too bright. I think it's the harmonic complexity that comes along with two pieces of metal sloshing together into some sort of condenser microphone, plus the overheads and stuff, and the bleed and all that. So like, I think it's the harmonic complexity there that does that. And I'm working on a band that I just produced in Europe right now. We're using a ton of room mics, right? Just like real rocky. But as we know, like when we use a lot of room mics, one thing that happens with the cymbals is they are very harmonically complex and they can get kind of bright at times. So like I'm using normal dark for that. But when I use something that's like, I'm producing something that's like tighter, less like jangly, for lack of a better term, then like I'll probably be normal neutral or maybe even go to bright.
Totally. And it's interesting you say that about the electronic music because I've tried it on some different genres too. And that was exactly what I found. Like anything that, as you said, didn't have the hi-hats, or anything that where it doesn't get like brittle or harsh when you just add more air to it, basically, it totally works with the normal or even the bright setting. And even and then I'm not saying it sounds harsh when you do that with band music. It works. It's just personal preference that I don't like to change the EQ too much in mastering sometimes when I like the top end of it. But on the other hand, what I also found interesting, that's also something I wanted to say, is when I got things to master that people did themselves at home, where they recorded it and mixed it and just sent it over for mastering, I compared my masters with the masters, and I wanted to double check and like see what's better, and I was just interested in testing it. And I found when it was pros who used it, but musicians, and they did it themselves in their jam spaces and stuff, then, I mean, some of them send in really harsh stuff, but a lot of them don't have enough like air, and like it's just not bright enough oftentimes, and it's like it's just sounding a little dull, and you know, all of that. So I would actually boost a lot of top end to those things anyways if I mastered it, and then the neutral thing or the normal thing worked perfectly well, if not the bright setting. It was just my own mixes that I felt were already really balanced, where I found like, it's brighter and it's cool, but I like it kind of a little darker. But it's totally dependent on what you send into it, you know? And I can see, you told me the thing about Bo, I can totally see that. And you know what? I think if I sent out more of the brighter stuff, it might just be me who's bothered by that, because most people would be like, yep, louder and brighter is better most of the time. So it's,
Yeah,
so it's
totally.
personal preference.
Yeah, I mean, and we've got guys who use it that reach out. It's so cool to like just hear back from the community, So it's like we got guys who reach out and they'll email me or hit me up and just be like, yo, like I only use gentle. The guys who are like singer-songwriter stuff, more delicate stuff. But they're like, I only use gentle, but by the way, like I'm getting the annual subscription because I only use gentle on everything, So it's like, yeah, cool. So that's the beauty of having like 9 different options, is because it was like they're all, these aren't static presets, right? So these are all like considering everything, making decisions, and they're all like dynamic, I guess is the word I'm looking for. They're all dynamic all the time. But those 9 presets are really just like, what kind of human are you, right? It's like, what do you like?
Yes.
It's like you kind of figure out like, I'm this kind of human and I like this,
Absolutely. And I have to say, the one thing that I also really enjoyed about it was that even every time it got brighter or too bright for my taste, it was not like harsh. It was not the nasty, 4K or upper mid-range stuff. It's like really air up there. And I even felt like at the same time, while making it brighter, it sort of tamed the harsh stuff that's below that. Like the stuff that's like annoying in cymbals, the stuff that's annoying in guitars. That stuff didn't get any brighter. It's like, I'm really talking about the way up there things. And so that is really cool, because that doesn't mean by all means that the nasty stuff gets louder. Not at all. So
cool.
Yeah, my impression was like there's a dip in the upper mid-range and then it gets brighter sort of sometimes, depending on the material. But like that's how I perceived it often.
I'm willing to bet that it's sort of like we're taking your mixing style and we're combining it with something with Joe, like my CTO is a fucking genius. But like we made. And so it's like, it is based on like my experience and my preferences and this type of stuff. So it's like me plus you probably equals dark normal. You know what I mean? But like me plus Bo equals loud bright. And it's kind of like when your band picks an engineer, like the outcome of that product is going to be the marriage between the two individuals. It's just you're using cyborg J brain, not normal J brain.
Absolutely. And what's also fascinating is that it's super consistent in the outcome, which I really liked, which means if you run the same thing through it twice, it's not that you get random results. And if you do, like if you upload a revision, you want the master to be the same, right? It has to be consistent. Right. So it does that. And even what I deliver, I mean, we all do probably, or often at least, that I deliver not only the final mix to my clients, to the artists I'm working with, but they get an instrumental, and sometimes they get stems and stuff like that. And if I run, and every single time they get the instrumental, for example, and if I upload the normal mix and then the instrumental with the same settings, it just sounds the same. Like there's no vocals, so things are different, and it analyzes it from scratch. It's a new thing, but it sounds the same, and it's consistent. So it's not a random thing. And even if I want to put 5 different mixes onto an EP and I master them all individually with Maastr, it sounds like a record and not drastically different. So that's something I also really enjoyed, because it's not that one song is crazy bright and the other one is like needs a different mode. So most of the time it's either everything's perfect or everything's a little bright and then I switch to another mode, but it's like consistent, and predictable, which is awesome. And I don't know how you do it, but that was one of the fears that I had, where I was like, what happens like if I have 5 songs on an EP and they all come out completely different, or like if I do a revision and it's different, but it's not. So
I have a funny anecdotal story about exactly what you're describing, and that's like, so before I went looking for a developer, before I found Joe, our CTO, and started building the team out and all that stuff, I was trying to get this to work just on a local prototype level. And okay, so this is such a funny story. It sounds like a name drop. I guess it is a name drop. We were just talking about this before we started the podcast. I flew to Portland, Oregon to help Chino from Deftones set up his home studio. I got there, and Lake Oswego, or I don't know if I should tell him. I guess it's not, you're not going to find it. He lives in Lake Oswego. And so Lake Oswego, Oregon ended up being like the epicenter of like the US COVID outbreak, like that particular week, right? And so I landed in Portland, and my buddy texted me. He's like, "Are you going to Lake Oswego right now?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Dude, that's like ground zero for COVID. This is like February 2020 or something." Yeah. And so I was like, I don't know. I mean, I'm just going over here and doing this thing. So I go to the hotel. I wake up, and Chino texts me, and he's like, "Yo, like, I don't think we can have people over, dude. Like, the whole world's like, especially in like, we're literally in like the hot spot." It was like, so I was like, okay. So I flew across the country, and I was just like, okay. And then so my manager for, my production career, he lives in Portland as well. So I was like, well, let's grab lunch. We'll rebook my flight for tonight, whatever, I'll go home. But let's grab lunch since I'm here. And so we did. And we were talking about COVID. We were talking like, what are we going to do, man? Like if this is, well, at the time we were like, what if this lasts 4 months? You know?
Oh yeah, little
And,
we know.
Yeah. And so we're like, what are we going to do? Yeah. And I was like, this might be a good opportunity. I was like, I've been kicking around this prototype. And do you ever have this, I don't know, phenomenon where you're finally talking about something out loud, and in doing so, you sort of accidentally solve a problem in your brain just because you externalized like, and so like I'm talking through what this thing is, and James, my manager's looking at me like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm like, the issue I'm having is we're at this Thai place trying to eat noodles and stuff, and I'm nerding out super hard. He doesn't know what I'm talking about. But as I'm talking about it, I had this like epiphany, and I'm like, wait, what if you know what I mean? And like, it's too techie to totally dissect. But I was just like, oh, that might do the thing. And it actually solves the exact problem that you were talking about, which was like in terms of dynamic consistency stuff. And so I was like, oh my God. So then I got on the plane, I come home, fly back to Boston. And like the first thing I do is I go to that prototype and I make these changes. And then my wife's, in the house. And I remember I just did it and I was like, holy shit. And then I like ran some more stuff and I was like, I think I did. I stood up out of my chair, and I was like pacing around the room and I was like, oh my God, I think I just cracked the code on like the one like major obstacle that I was having like for this thing. And so it's just funny that you bring that specifically up, because that specifically was a major challenge that almost stopped me from pursuing this project at all.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I thought I imagined that it would be hard to do that, but like you pulled it off. So and yeah, that phenomenon, yeah, totally. And like that phenomenon is really something like, I don't know what it is, but it happens when you just talk to somebody about it and then it just comes to you. Same thing when you like, did you ever have that when you play back a mix or let's say a mix, and you say like, sit down, listen to this, what do you think of it? And before they even say something, just the fact that they're sitting there listening to it and you standing next to them, you immediately hear what's wrong, like as if you were hearing through their ears or something. Like sometimes I'm like, you don't even have to say it. I know now that the vocal is too loud or something,
Yeah, no, same.
It's crazy.
Do you remember a band called Polar Bear Club? I don't know. They're an awesome band.
Yeah.
Like,
totally. I love them.
Yeah. So I love Polar Bear Club. So Chris Brown, like one of the primary songwriters from Polar Bear Club, was over. And when I was doing Defeater, Empty Days and Sleepless Nights, I was like doing the mixes, and like I had Chris over, and it was exactly that. I made so many changes. Chris didn't say anything. He was just like, yeah, but he was just like there. And I was like, he's a trusted dude and I want his opinion and all that stuff. But just, I don't know what it was, just like having him there, I'd play it back and I'm like, oh, that pause doesn't need to be there. And I've got like I just, all of this stuff. And I'm like, oh, no, thank you for sitting here. I now know what I need to do.
Exactly. It's so crazy weird how that works. Yeah, totally. Yeah. But you, as I said, you pull it off and it works. It's consistent. And I don't know why it took me, I gotta be honest, it took me a really long time. I've been playing around with it for a while now. It took me a really long time to be able to accept that like an AI master like that is just as good. Not every time, I gotta be honest, but like it's just as good as the masters I do. And sometimes it's better and it's just different sometimes, but like it's really good. And it took me a while to just accept that because I felt really uncomfortable trusting a computer with that, or like I felt like this is art. Like I can't. Isn't the human supposed to do this? Like how can a computer react to this in a way that I want it? But it's like it does. And so I'm wondering. I really, really think that this is a really awesome tool, especially for self-recording artists, especially for DIY producers, but like basically for everybody. And I really believe that. But I'm wondering, like, is there something we can do or you can do to make people trust it? Things like that a little more, because part of it is probably that some of these tools just got a really bad rep for other reasons, like it's not your fault, and part of it is that it's not a human, it's a robot, and we're talking about art. So I know that a lot of people are hesitant to use something like that, and I think they absolutely should try it and should be open to it, because I did too, and I find it really amazing. But I sometimes don't know how to explain that to people, or how to convince them that they should give it a go and be open, and that it really works. So I don't know, maybe you have something there. Maybe you have thought about what it is to make that easier for people, because I really want them to try it out.
Me too. So. Obviously, me too. But listen, some people are never going to accept it, and that's something I just know. Listen, dude, there's people who still won't record with a computer, right? There's still people who only use tape. Still they love having a console. Whatever it is, there's people who think that using plugins is soulless. Like that happens. And I've made this metaphor before, and I think it's like, it's a little sketchy, but it's just that like there's still people that ride horses. And there's probably even some people that ride horses to work. But most of us drive a car, right?
Yeah.
And like, and so like, it used to be that like horse was the new tech, dude. Did you see this saddle? This saddle is sick, and I'm going to work now on my horse, and that's awesome. That's fine. But things do evolve and things change, right? And so like, I came in right at the very beginning of like digital recording, and so like recording to a hard drive, like using plugins and all that stuff. And it was probably 2004, 2005, and I was catching shit from my older like engineer buddies who I was learning from, and they'd be like, "You got to get a console," And I was like, I don't want to get a console. That thing breaks all the time, and like it's expensive, and like I don't want to work that way. And I come from a computer science background. I've always been like a really like bleeding edge, tech forward type person. So it's no surprise whatsoever I'm behind this. But I think for the haters, and I know you're out there, like I think if you try it, you might still hate it, but you'll probably say, yeah, it sounds good, but I just don't like it emotionally. Yeah. I don't like the concept of it. And that's okay. You don't have to. But I think that's probably a fringe amount of people who are so staunch that they wouldn't accept something new. Because I'll tell you what, one day, like you're going to put your grandma in a self-driving car and go to the grocery store, and you're going to be completely fine with that. You know what I mean? So if you'll put your grandma in a self-driving car, you can put your mix in the Maastr,
Yeah, that's a great analogy, actually. Yeah. Absolutely. That's also funny you mentioned that analogy, because we were driving yesterday on Saturday, a friend of mine had his 40th birthday, and another friend of mine picked me up to go there. He got a Tesla that he got from work. Like it's a car that they have there. And we were talking about the whole autopilot thing, and while we were riding in this Tesla, and another one was in the car too, like another one of our friends, and he was like, how can you, like, would you guys ever trust this? Like, never ever would I trust a car to drive for me. Like, that's crazy. And we had this conversation about that, and it's exactly like you said. I was like, yeah, I would probably trust it. Definitely, I would trust it. I'm excited that and you could definitely do that with the music too. It's far less dangerous. But I think that's one thing. But I think there's the other thing where a lot of people who say they would never trust like an AI to do their mastering. The reality is that a lot of these people, and probably myself included, are not really good, like the top level mastering engineers, because we're producers, mixers, musicians, right. Not specialized mastering engineers. If someone like, I don't know, Michael Asian or somebody like that, who does nothing but mastering all the time and who's crazy good at that, if he says, I can do a better job, I don't really want to trust a thing like that, then that's, to me, is a different thing than someone who's mixing 5 songs, you're mastering 5 songs, or you're saying that I'd rather do it myself, because I really think you're going to have a super hard time beating something like Maastr, especially if you're not super experienced, and even the pros probably have a hard time. I think that most people are better off using it. Honestly, not only that it doesn't cause harm, but they're better off using it.
I think you're probably right. And I'm in a position to think that, so it's really nice to hear you say that. And ready for more anecdotal stories? When I first started this, we didn't have a platform yet. You couldn't log in. There was no users. It was just proof of concept, because, if I'm going to put all of this energy behind this, right, it's like you said, my name's on it. Like, it has to be good. So what would happen is I'd get jobs for mastering. I would do the mastering job, and then I would also run the songs through my local prototype, and I would say, hey, guys, I made 2. Let me know which one you like. What I found is about 50-50. I didn't always win. I didn't always beat it. And that still happens. I manage an artist called Arya, right? And I just mastered 2 songs for Arya, right? And he goes, yo, bro, I love the master on this one. It's just what it needed. But this other one, we're just going to use the master, okay? And I was like, sure. I guess I did it technically, but like,
that's funny.
Yeah, so it just happens. And I would also argue, like, yes, if you're being romantic about it, I can see your point. But, like, I dare you to just, like, be able to pick it out of a crowd. Like, here's 2 songs, right? Which one had it? Which one went through Maastr? Which one was mastered by so-and-so? Do you really know? And furthermore, even if you know, which I bet you can't guess, why do you care? Because the people who are listening to the song don't care. Right? You might care because you feel threatened, or I'm not sure why. There's probably a myriad of reasons you could care. But whatever those reasons are, they do not translate to your audience. Your audience just wants something for them, an awesome song that gives them an emotional response that makes them feel a certain way when they listen to it.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't think anybody needs to feel threatened, because I don't think that a thing like Maastr is going to be the end of all mastering engineers. It's like different.
Of course not. Yeah.
It's completely different, because for example, if I want feedback on my mix from someone, I'm going to go to a mastering engineer. That's something Maastr can't do right now. But if I love my mix, I love the balance, I love everything about it, and I want it to be done quickly, finished, and like hassle-free and all of that, and then of course I can use something like Maastr, and I can trust that it's great. It's different things, and sometimes there's other things involved with mastering where you need a mastering studio for. So I don't think it's the same thing, actually. And honestly, I oftentimes, as you said, I oftentimes do both. I master it myself, I run it through Maastr, and I compare the two. Sometimes I just do it, even if I know I'm going to master it myself. If somebody hires me to do it, I will master it myself. But even then, sometimes I just use Maastr as a reference tool. Like I sometimes just do it still because I'm curious to hear what Maastr does. And if I like what Maastr does more than what I did, I know that I'm not done yet. I have to go back to the drawing board and improve until I like mine more,
That's awesome.
That's the challenge. Like, I can't accept that that there's something out there that I like better than my own, so I have to improve my own until I like it more. Or I have to tell the artist, dude, look, like, use this tool, it's better than what I did, But like,
that's really neat.
So I don't think it's the end of mastering. It can be used as a reference tool. It's a different use case. And the reality today is also that so many people are releasing a lot of songs consistently, because that's what you do. You want to be on playlists. You want to have consistent output. You don't have the classic album cycle. You release a song every month or something. And you have to do it fast, as you said. There's no time for 2 weeks or 3 weeks of revisions and stuff. And for those people, I think it's an absolute no-brainer. Because of the reasons that you already mentioned. Yeah, it's like, when you're done mixing, you're also done with the whole thing, and you can just upload it. And that, combined with the lack of experience and mastering of a lot of DIY people, it's it's hard to argue against it in a way. So it really works. Now, can we talk about how it works for from the artist's perspective? Like, if you're an artist now and you want to use that, how does that work? Do I pay Maastr like I'd pay a mastering engineer? Like, how does it work? And is there any benefit aside from it sounding great?
If you're an artist, you just make an account, and you actually don't even have to subscribe or pay right away. It's free, and you can start throwing songs on it. I think one thing that you touched upon was these types of products, previously speaking, don't have a great reputation. We're trying to change that, but in trying to change that, we realize that people are going to have to taste test. People are going to have to kick the tires, and we have to earn their trust by way of them having this great experience. Log in, works great on mobile. Okay, drag my song, my EP, my album, whatever in. You can drag them all in at once. Oh, cool, there's these different sonic settings. Oh, cool, this is very organized. Oh, cool, I can actually resequence my record right here. Oh, there's a global player. All of this stuff, oh, whoa, commenting? Oh, that's really going to be good for when I'm collaborating with my guitar player. Oh, cool, right? You can, but at least for free, you can at least upload everything and listen to it on the site. And then if you want to, download your master. It's $5 per download. So it's it's nothing, right? And then and it's not like every time you upload it, it's it's $5, right? It's that. And then if you want to, you can go with some of our different tiered plans. We've got $10, $20, and $50 plan. $50 plan is for someone who's going to do, who want to download a bunch of revisions, and you get unlimited access to all of the sonic settings. You get unlimited downloads, unlimited comment, unlimited everything, right? And then we've got, and you can go to the plan pricing page. It's maastr.io/pricing. And it'll show you what it's going to be. So if you don't have an unlimited plan, you get different levels of feature sets. But every time you want to download something, it's $5, right? So it's super cheap. But before you spend a dime, you get to sort of hear the magic of the algorithm. And that's dope. I think you do have to, if you want to try out all 9, I think you do have to have the middle plan at least. But I would say it's $20 a month well invested just to, it's crazy, right? Because realistically speaking, for a single song, I mean, I know what I charge as a mastering engineer, but even on the lower end, I feel for a single song, that for any mastering engineer, I think that's reputable, you're probably in the $70 range, something like that.
100%.
You know what I mean? So that's a song, right? And it's slow. And you got an email, it's coordination. It's you can make your mix revision at 3:30 a.m. because you had an epiphany in bed and you jumped out of bed, you printed the revision, and then by 3:36 a.m. you can hear, you know what I mean? So you just get it back just like that, and it's just so much more affordable. It's not even remotely comparable on a time and cost scale.
Absolutely. So let's just say someone does a song a month, and they have the middle tier, so they have all the dynamic and color settings and all of that. They would pay $20 a month and then $5 per download, per wave download.
Sure.
And you only have to download once you know that this is the one that I'm going to use. Before that, you can just stream and check until you're happy, and then you're like, okay, that's the one. I'm going to download it. So if you do that, it's like $25. Let's say you do an instrumental or something. Let's say it's $30 because you need 2 downloads or something. But then you would have a fully mastered thing for $30 instead of 70 at least, like what you just said.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
even if you would do a song every 2 months, it would still be cheaper. So I think, yeah, and it's faster too. It's not only the money.
Yeah, and you can't not talk about the fact that you just have this like AI buddy to throw things at. Like it's not only is it like way cheaper, it's like you get to throw the one that you're like, okay, I think this is good, but there's not that anxiety of like, this has to be the one because I emailed the guy and okay, is it perfect? And then you go through all this anxiety of being like, because once I give it to him, I don't want to have to give him a bunch more. You can literally go like, I feel pretty good about this one. Let's check it out. Boom, send it. And then you go like, okay, I was right about a lot of things, but there is some stuff that I would change. Or let me sleep on that. Dude, it just removes all of the stress and anxiety and logistics and cost. That sounds good to me.
It absolutely sounds good to me. And I feel like I always want to say that in a way because I know so many really great mastering engineers that I love and who do great work. And I still, even though we just said all that, they are not like, you still need people like that. And there's a place for that type of work. But I still think that in some cases, this is not an option anyways. So people would just do it themselves. They wouldn't go to someone. They would just do it themselves. Right. And then it would suck compared to what Maastr does. So for those people, right. Maastr finally enables this high quality mastering and enables people to put out more great art and faster and all of that. So I'm all for that. Yeah, and I know that people are going to email me because I know there's more to mastering than just upload, like doing a single song, and there's metadata, and there is like different versions, and there's all these things and sequencing, and I know all of that, and you do too, Jay. But still, for some people, this is exactly what they need, and this is all they ever gonna need, basically, what you're offering here. So yeah, we are aware of the fact that there's some things, but like this does it. And cool. So one thing we haven't talked about yet was that it's not only a mastering platform, but it's a collaboration platform too, right? So you can like add comments to the mixes. If you're a band, like a lot, like I guess every band member can sort of be part of the project, and you can comment on like when you are the one doing the mixes and you upload it and then you run it through Maastr. Then the others can chime in and tell you if they like the mix or not. If you're a producer, you can collaborate with your clients. So it's not only mastering. Awesome. It's a collaboration platform that you can use to deliver and to deliver your files and to do mix revisions and mastering revisions.
Yeah, and I think you're bringing up a really interesting point that we haven't exactly touched upon yet. Typically, people who love the platform and use the platform, they start uploading things to it much earlier than they would, because typically you don't hear anything mastered until the very end. But once we've got like a rough drum mix, some guitars, bass and vocals in there and stuff, or provided we're doing a rock record, right? Like we upload every night, right? So it's like we work hard all day, we upload every night, then then you've got like everyone in the band is a collaborator. They get notified that, hey, there's new revisions, right? And so you can get in there so once you're in a revision and you're actually like in the comment section where you can hear the track, you can tag each other. So you can say like, Jim can tag, I don't know, Jerry, and say like, hey, dude, like, do you think your bass fill is a little loud here? And then when you hit the @ sign, it brings up these brackets, and you can actually time code exactly like, and I'm talking about this bass fill, like from exactly here to exactly there, right? So it's like really organized. And then you can even say, hey, because I kind of liked it and if you hit the hashtag button or hit the other little button, and it'll bring up your revision list. I kind of liked it in revision 4. Like, can we bring it back to that one? What do you think about that? And what's so cool is everybody, all the mixes, all the comments, all the stuff is just in one place. It can be in the palm of your hand. You could be taking a bathroom break at work, put your AirPods in, right? And you could like be commenting right there, or you can, you're jamming it on the way home in the car. And so, yeah, the collaboration aspect is actually really initially the brainchild of my CTO, because at first it was just a list. You just upload a song and then you download it and you're like, that sounds better, right? And then Joe was like, well, like, what about this? And he sent me a prototype of like sort of what, and I'm like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Of course, like we could totally solve that problem too. And so, we spent really like a year with like some really pro designers that we hired from out here in Boston. And we put together a whole new UI, a whole new commenting system, made it mobile friendly, like did all that stuff. So like, yeah, the commenting is really good. So because like I wake up in the morning, I check my email and it'll say like, new comments from blah, blah, blah. And let me sort of just quickly describe like what a typical cycle is. So you're working with an artist or a band, and you hit export at the end of the night, plop, drag it in, everything uploads and processes, the band gets notified, whatever. So sometimes the artist, let's say they're not in the studio anymore, you're just mixing something. The artist says, okay, I got those. You don't have to keep checking to see if you got mix notes or whatever. It's just, you just wait until they put all the mix notes in, and there's a button that says finalize comments. And when you click that button, it'll say, okay, so this is it. These are all the comments, because we're going to let the mixing engineer know that these are all the comments. And you're like, those are all the comments for this revision. Cool. That locks the commenting. The engineer gets notified, and it really streamlines the efficiency. So you're not getting side texts from, the drummer being like, hey, dude, just wanted to make sure, like whatever. You're just like, it's a very efficient process where it's like, here's the new revision. Then the band can take as long as they like. They can take a week going back and forth, making sure they have all their comments in there, time-coded, tagged, the whole thing, and be like, yeah, that's how we feel about this revision. They hit the finalize comments button. That then sends an email to the engineer, and he wakes up the next morning and goes like, oh, cool, such and such artist finished commenting on this track. I'll make those revisions today or whenever you make them, hopefully soon. and then you make the revisions, and then you toss it back in Maastr, and then the band gets notified, like, oh, cool, he did all that. Like, let's check this out. And then that refinement process continues until the only comment that you see is, dude, this rules. Thank you so much. This is perfect. And then you're like, all right, that one's done. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's I haven't even thought about that with the notification stuff. I haven't even thought about that so much, because the one thing that I love everything about what you just said. The one thing that I didn't like about it was, that's the only fact really, is that as far as I know, everybody has to make an account, right, to be able to do that. Like, there are other products out there where you just share a link and they can open the link and then comment on the file, which I kind of prefer if you have someone who's like, they don't have to permanently be in there. And like, we all have way too much accounts anyway. So I kind of get when people are hesitant to sign up for another thing. But what you just said makes total sense, because the whole getting notified part just only works if you have an account, right? So
that's right.
Yeah.
So we do have plans. If you want to know what's on the roadmap, we have plans to make a link style preview page where you can get a link, where you can generate a link for your project, and you can spam it around to whomever you want, and they'll be able to listen to it, and they can side text you or whatever. But because we do want to keep the whole chain like really tight, and efficient. Yeah, I understand it takes 45 seconds, but you got to make an account. Yeah.
Yes, and it's a free account, by the way. So that
it's free.
Don't get this wrong. Only one person has to pay for it. The other ones have free accounts and they can comment, right?
Yeah, that's a great thing to notice, because and the engineer has a allow download button. So if you're an engineer and you're like, okay, but I don't want the band to just download the mixes before they pay me or whatever it is, there's a little button that you can click, and it's like you can enable or disable downloads for the band. So if the band, is all paid up and everything's all good and you want them to have access to downloads, you can just click it. They don't have to pay to downloads. Like, it only has to be paid once, and then everybody can grab it.
Yes, awesome. Yeah, that's good. You clarified that. Yeah, I mean, it's a free thing, and then the whole notification thing and keeping that communication and all of that streamlined that way makes perfect sense. I never thought about it from that perspective. But yeah, maybe some people will appreciate the link when you added that feature. It's not a deal breaker anyways. I just, that just explained it very well. Cool. So
thanks.
I actually didn't expect this whole intro to be all about Maastr, but I was so interested in a couple of things. It almost sounds like a commercial. So, but I don't know. But I think it's still interesting for people to hear this, because I really wanted people to understand what this actually is and what AI mastering actually is and why they don't need to be afraid of it. So, and I really encourage people to just try it out for free. But I also want to say something where, especially the ones who are not familiar with your work or who are maybe from a different genre or something, you are a musician at heart yourself, and you are an artist. You understand their perspective. You are the work you've done is a lot of independent DIY sort of stuff. It's a lot of punk rock. It's a lot of that type of thing, which means that that might or might not be different from other companies who are doing something like that, but you definitely care about the art and about the emotion coming across in the end, and about how the artist feels about how close they are to the music, and that you don't want to mess this up in mastering and mixing and whatnot. So you are aware of all that. And I think that is also something that makes a difference to me. Like, and that was immediately the thing that made me try it, actually, because I knew of your background, and I kind of immediately had more trust in you in that product than I had in like other products. And it turned out that I was right, and it is as good as I hoped it would be. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that whole background too, because I feel like you didn't just want to make a product, but you really care, and you have always cared about the art and about the integrity of it and the authenticity and about what the artists feel like and how they are close to their art and all of that.
So I started playing guitar around 12, and I started my first band when I was 14. And my favorite band is Fugazi, and I was just into like punk, and I was straight edge like for most of my life. And I was just like part of these communities, and I just really loved like punk, skateboarding, got into hardcore a little bit later. And then I'm still like a huge like, emo kid and all of that stuff. So like, yeah, I come from, I don't know, these genres where the expectation is just to be authentic. We know that we're not going to become rich and famous playing this type of music, you know, like that's never the point. The point is just that like it's expressive, it's what we like, and we wanted to be a part of that. I felt the exact same way about skateboarding too. And yeah, those are sort of my ethics and sort of where I come from with that stuff. And how that relates to the inception of like creating something like Maastr is that like a perfect example is back to that story where it's like I wasn't going to put this out until I knew it was good, especially if we're going to put my name in it, right? Like, it just has to be good. I feel about it the same way I feel about every single record I do, every relationship I have, where it's like, I really have to stand behind this or I just wouldn't be able to put it out, you know? And it's like, I think the artists that I work with, hopefully I think they experience like an attention to detail and a thoroughness in my process and in my records that I hopefully beats their expectations, because I very, very much care about the records I make and the relationships that I've gained through the records that I make. And so I think that's sort of intrinsic to just how I like to operate through in life in general. And Life in General, a great MXPX record, by the way. But yeah, but yeah, that's really dating myself. But another aside, Mike Herrera from MXPX and I were born in the same hospital in Bremerton, Washington. But anyway, getting back on track. So that's really nice to hear you say that we only know each other so well, but that you perceived something like that from me, and that made you want to try it. And that's good, because I can totally understand how when it's just like a company, it feels way more just like a product. You know what I mean? And you're like, and we're like probably rightfully distrustful of a lot of companies anyway, you know? And so like here, it's like, I have skin in the game. You know what I mean? Yeah,
totally. And we've been talking about that whole topic on the other conversation that we had on the Outback Recordings podcast that we did 2 years ago, where we kind of were like, it's funny how a lot of people from our scene, from the punk scene, from the DIY scene, from like those types of people who just had to figure things out, or who had to create something from nothing or learn something themselves, you know, how some of these people end up doing cool shit and like building cool things and building these small little companies, and a lot of them are actually really good at that, really successful at that. Or you'll find people like that also in like the major labels sometimes, or like in like other companies, like consulting people, or you know, it's like funny where those people sometimes come from. And I think it's just because you've learned how to solve problems really well. You had to do a lot of shit yourself. You had to learn it yourself the hard way in a way, and it's like. There are a lot of examples like that, and Maastr is just one of those companies where I feel like I don't know, it's even fun to just know that you can support a company like that compared to some other company without naming any names. But like that's also part of it. That's part of it that makes it even more enjoyable for me. I mean, this week, by the time this episode is out, the other one that I'm going to be talking about will already be out. But this week, we have an episode with Dave from Room Sound. We talked to him last week, recorded thing, And it's a similar thing. Like, you know, not only is the product really, really, really great, but like if you know the people behind it and if you know their story and how much they care and how ridiculous the effort is that they put into this and all of that, it's even better. And like that interview with Dave was like crazy. Once he explained to us what went into this, like he explained the whole process and everything, and like it was, I thought it would be crazy, but it's like way crazier than I thought it was. And that whole process of making those samples. And when you hear how much people put into something like this and where they come from and why it matters to them and all of that, makes it even better to me. And so I'm excited for all those products way more than I'm excited for like some big things that where I don't know. It's like
dude, it's a labor of love. It comes from a punk ethic. I know Dave really well. I've done 2 drum sample libraries with Dave, and I've gotten to look behind the curtain a little bit on how much work he puts in. It is crazy, and he's also, you want to talk about ethics and stuff. Like, he's one of the best dudes, period. And what's funny, man, is a guy like Dave, he's creating something kind of like I did that like is gonna piss some people off, right? Like it's a drum sample library. Now those are like pretty like commonly used now. I'd say like we're kind of over the hump with that. But when drum sample libraries and just sampling in general started, like I was there. Like people, the older generation was like, just get a drummer, dude. Like whatever. Yeah. And you're like, it's a different thing kind of though. And like, you listen to every modern record now that has samples on it, basically.
Yeah. It doesn't have to sound like samples though. And that's similar to what you did there. Like you take a concept that has been there, but like people not everybody really likes it because it has flaws and because it's not sometimes not really authentic and stuff. But you still believe that there's the potential, and then you still want to use it, but you just make it better, and you get it to a point where you can actually use it, and it doesn't sound like samples anymore, but you get all the benefits. And it's the similar thing with like something like Maastr, where AI mastering was a thing, but it was not something that was like what like the people accepted really, and a lot of it didn't really sound great. So somebody needs to make it so that people can finally enjoy it and can finally use it. So yeah. You didn't invent it, but you made your version of it, and I hope that people enjoy it as much as I do.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I think you find that like iteration with products all the time, right? Like we saw it with like MySpace, like kind of janky, but like it was the predecessor to what was basically going to take over the world. You know what I mean? And it's like we see it with like product iterations all the time. We think about cell phones or computers or everything, and it's like there's like a good concept that has not yet maturely been executed. And then so usually the mature execution of that concept comes a little later.
Yeah, for sure. When it comes to your mixes, that's also something that I find interesting, but that we often don't think about. We're hesitant to use like AI mastering and stuff, but we use other tools that do a lot of things automatically all the time in our mixes without really questioning it, and we embrace it a lot because it's faster and it's great, and like it's so. What about your current workflow? Are you still doing a lot of things like outside the box analog stuff when you mix? Are you mostly in the box? And if you're like, and the stuff you do in the box, do you yourself like trust intelligent tools to do part of the work for you? Like, is that something you do yourself? Because that's similar, right? You trust somebody's tool to do the job, and it does it automatically. So what's that like for you?
Great questions. So I've migrated. I've got, if you look down here, we've got our compressors and whatnot, and we've got a whole studio here full of mic pre's and EQs and whatever. And so that stuff used to be used in a hybrid fashion. These days, I just use it on the way in. And I think it's a testament to the tools. They're just good. Yeah. And so I think the last few years that I was hybrid mixing was sort of out of this like guilt that like I felt kind of like a loser for just mixing in the box or whatever.
Especially if you have the gear and you're not using it. That feels even worse. Like, exactly. Same here. I stopped recording 2 years ago, but I have still 2 racks full of stuff in front of me, and I feel like I have to use it. So,
I know.
Sometimes, so, yeah.
And that stuff is fun to use, but, like I'm still a very active producer here. And so I'm tracking through that stuff constantly, and I think everything still gets used, but it just gets used in the way in. I'm deep enough into my career as a producer where I trust my gut and I trust my ears when I grab a signal on the way in. I know what it takes to overbake something, and I know about how far I can push things in and how to derive the benefits from like the nicer, kind of warmer analog harmonics, if that's what you're going for and stuff. So I bring my stuff in a way that I feel like already sounds really good. But then, dude, not only do I mix in the box, I mix strictly on headphones now. So I don't even like these monitors back here. Like we track with them, but like you won't see me delivering a final mix with them anymore. And that was sort of born out of necessity when my son was born, and I had to be able to mix from anywhere. So I own far too many computers. Many of them have an identical laptops and computers. They have an identical folder structure, plugins. Everything's like Dropbox all synced and all that stuff. And all my projects get recorded into Dropbox as we're recording. So we're gaining redundant, like every time I record a vocal, whatever, it's being uploaded, it's being redundantly stored. And so what's cool is that, let's say I'm working down here, whatever it is, but I need to make a mix revision. I'm on the road, whatever. I'm at my grandma's house for Thanksgiving. This literally happens every year.
Yeah.
And and someone goes, "Hey, dude, I know it's Thanksgiving, but whatever." And I'm like, yeah, hold on, I got you. And I can go boop, right? And I just like download that project. If, whatever, if I don't have enough like internal storage, I can grab that one, pop it open. And I just always keep like a DAC with me, like some little interface. And just to make sure that my headphones have enough juice so that I can hear them in the way that I'm used to being able to hear them. I'll make the revision. I'll upload it to Maastr, right? And they'll get their notification. Oh, thank you, dude. You're a lifesaver. And here's the thing, like when we talk about like trusting tools, all that's required to trust a tool is liking the output, right? So it's like, that's it. So if you like the output, like that's the whole thing. So like, no, I don't EQ my overheads nearly as much anymore now that Soothe exists because it's just better,
Yes. And I would never make 36 tiny notches, dynamic notches anyways with a FabFilter EQ. But like if Soothe can do it and it sounds great, then I'm happy to let it do the thing,
Oh, yeah. I mean, talk about like a great new company with not that many products, but the products they have like truly solve problems. And Soothe, like, I don't know, man. I've heard a couple people talk shit on Soothe, and I'm just like, why? Like, it's just like, it's so good.
Me too. Yeah.
I use it
so crazy.
Everywhere. I use it if I'm doing like a Maastr personally, and I find that they like have too much. This is common, like the bass guitar, like 90 to 120, something like that. But the bass, I know, I check it. It's primarily living in the center of the mix. I can bring Soothe all the way down there. I can put it into mid mode, right? And I can dynamically attenuate, because usually on bass guitar, it's attributed to like a string, not all the strings. It's usually they've got a fucking dead floppy low string, right? Yep. And they go up the fretboard, and something about like shortening the length of the string causes this like whoom thing to happen. And then when that happens, I'm like, God damn it, there goes my headroom. And I have to get in there, and I'll use Soothe in mid mode, and I'll just like tuck it down just, for that. And the cool thing is, if it is just being a problem in those moments and I dial in my settings right, I can kind of set it and forget it. And anytime the bass so happens to go whoom, right? It'll go whoom.
Exactly. Especially like you can do it since Soothe 2 came out. I think you can.
Soothe 2 like makes that possible.
Yeah, that's same. I love it. I can totally see when people like abuse these tools because they don't really understand them, or like I've heard a bunch of mixes where the guitars and cymbals were just turned into white noise basically because they had no character anymore, and like people go crazy with those resonances. But I mean, you can learn that stuff, and it takes a while, and then you get it, and then it's awesome, and it's
but I love
it.
What you're talking
also
about
things like Golfus, like talk about like
Golfus rules.
Yeah,
Golfus is another one that rules. But like you're just talking about people who just made a bad mix and made bad choices. Soothe didn't make them make that bad choice, right? They just got a little trigger happy with their new plugin. And hopefully they'll come back to Jesus here soon enough. Yeah. But like that's all that happened. It's like, and that's what I was saying. Like, if the output is good, then that validates everything. Yeah. So if the output sucks, it's just because you made a bad choice. I mean, I'm sure maybe there's some plugins that exist that all they do is make stuff bad, but I can't think of any at the moment.
Yeah, totally. So long story short, you totally trust tools like that and use them all the time, and you're happy that they make you a faster, better mixer, and you don't feel like it's like your work is worth less because of that or something. Like, I think quite the opposite is true, because the less time you spend listening to a song while you mix, the more like objective you stay, and the better are the decisions you're going to make. So I think a mix is not worth more just because someone spent twice the amount of time on it. I think the opposite is oftentimes the case. And if you have tools that just allow you to work intuitively and quickly and keep your ears fresh and make it fun and all of that, then I think the outcome will not be worse because of that. Quite the opposite.
Well, I mean, look at a guy like Chris Lord-Alge, right? I know he has his like assistant set everything up for him and stuff. He walks in the studio and he hits play, right? And his thing, from what I understand, like most of his mixes per song are about 3 hours per song. And I think his assistant sets it all up. He comes in and then he does one. Cool. They have to print all the stuff. He goes to lunch, probably in his Lamborghini or something, right? And then like, then he comes back from lunch and he does another one. That's another 3 hours. Now, I won't say that I know I have friends that have done mixes with CLA, and he's getting a real nice hourly rate. if that's the
Yes,
case. Because
yes.
yeah.
Absolutely. I know. I have that too. I had those conversations too. And then there's the other thing. If you're in Australia, and I don't know. I haven't experienced myself, but I've talked to someone in Australia who has, where it was like you get a call at like 3 a.m. that the mix that Crystal Energy has done is done, and you have like 2 hours to make revision requests. And if you don't do it, like the next mix is on the desk, and it's like they know it's just done. So things like that too. Not to talk shit about Crystal Energy, but
seminal mixer.
Yeah, exactly. But so that means the overall mixing takes him, I don't know, 5 hours, including revisions and stuff, and then he's on to the next one. But his mixes don't suck because of that. It's he just knows what he's doing. He's very fast, and he does it intuitively. So
yeah, and there's something to be said there too for like when people are paying for like my craft or your craft as a mixing engineer, they're not paying for how long we spent on their mix. They're mostly paying for the last 18 years of my life. Yes. Right? Where I've like spent like almost 2 decades now, like learning how to do this and getting good at this. And so it's like, yes, I'm going like to take less time. I will charge you more money to take less time now than I would have 10 years ago, but you will be happier at the end.
And that's all that matters. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's all that matters. There's Andrew Sheps says this all the time. Whenever I listen to a podcast, there's something that he's on. He's always like, all that matters is what comes out of the speakers. And that's
dude,
still
Sheps is like, Sheps is like why I was like, I really took a leap into just going fully digital and headphones and stuff. Cause I was listening to him and he's got a million awards. He's got so many amazing mixes. He's got like 2 Neve consoles and a whole room full of gear. And he's like, oh yeah, I use this. He's like pointing to his MacBook. And I was like, okay.
Yes. Well, and headphones. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And headphones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, totally
so
crazy. Yeah. And then even guys like, I just heard a podcast of him with Michael Brower, also one of the best mixers ever on this planet.
Yep.
And like, apparently Michael Brower called Andrew Sheps and he was all like nervous and like he was basically panicking because he planned to go to a hybrid setup and then eventually in the box, and he just didn't know if he was good enough to do that and if all his clients would go away and all of that. So he called Andrew Sheps to get advice from him, like how he pulled it off. And that just shows how insecure even the best mixers are when it comes to that sort of stuff. And then, but when they do it, nothing bad happens, and they're just as good as they always were, because they always made their decisions with their ears, anyways, and not with the tools. So there's one thing though that I think, and that's something I wanted to ask you real quick. There's something I love to do when I mix, and that might completely be nonsense, but maybe you've done something similar. When I get files that haven't been tracked really well, like not the stuff that you track in your studio where you use the good stuff on the way in, I do that too. But when I get files that have been tracked into some Focusrite interface with nothing on it, and like something's just missing. And again, I said Focusrite just because that's a cliche, but like into the interface.
There goes your Focusrite sponsorship.
Exactly. But you know exactly what I mean. Any of any normal interface, and then you listen back, and it's good, but you know, something's missing. And yes, you can do all kinds of things in the mix. Boring is mainly the thing. What I love to do is I take an hour or so, or half an hour, or 15 minutes before I mix, depending on the thing, and I will basically reamp stuff. Like before I start mixing, I will run a vocal out of the computer into whatever I have and back into the computer, and I will replace or like re-record these tracks and just give them what I think they're lacking, and then I start mixing. And that might be totally like not necessary, but to me it always feels more exciting, and there's a level of randomness and like a level of excitement to it that I just enjoy. And then I'm all in the box for the most part. Yeah, I'm all in the box, but I just like to do that. And is that something you've ever done? Is that something that makes sense to you?
I do it all the time. When I say I'm in the box, I just mean like once we've gathered what's going to be the final tracks that I'm mixing, then yes, but primarily with vocals, I'll be honest. It's like usually I can stay in the box with almost anything, but sometimes a vocal just feels boring. And usually what it needs for me is some distressor style, like, or I've got these like 1176 Blueies. It needs some sort of like grit character that I wish happened on the way in, where I can actually sort of understand why maybe the tracking engineer was like, well, I'm not mixing this. I want to give Jay the maximum amount of options here. Yeah. So he was really conservative, maybe with like, okay, well, just like whatever, or you know, maybe they're on a budget and they just didn't have the gear. So yeah, they just went direct into like an interface and just didn't have like a lot of character to it. So yeah, I do that all the time. I'll usually do it in a batch. Usually what I'll find is I can find a setting that I'm like, yep. See, one thing I really like is like when I'm pushing into like analog stuff is I like it when the loudest stuff kind of causes that a little bit of that like nice distortion. You know what I mean? So that's sort of how I like gain stage my outboard compression. And I'll usually use a Disc 2 or depending on the genre 3 mode if I'm using a distressor. And like I give it that little bit, like I find the loudest, what's like the loudest moment going to be? And like how much like crunch on that do I want? I'll set it for that. And then usually, and then I'll check the softer passages as well too. But usually like that's a good place to go. Then I can just, I won't get too into it, but I can set up how I do my like my routing for my tracks through a group bus, and they all just go. I do like this weird render in place trick, and then they all just go through. I have the originals, and right under them I get like the new baked ones, and then I can look at like Cubase will be like, all right, sometimes if there's a lot of backing vocals and it's a full length record, it's like these will be done in 6 hours, you know, whatever it is, and I just go like boop. And then I go about my day, and like this just turns into like a distressor machine.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's super interesting to hear that you do that too, and yeah, there's something about this that's just exciting, and it's very similar to what I do. Yeah, it's like reamping in a way. Okay, cool.
Yeah, totally.
And you don't have to do the whole recall thing, because these are things that I don't have to change ever. Like this, not something that's going to ever be part of a revision request, because it's just about the character, and I can always still make things louder, brighter, or whatever. And like, so I don't have to worry about that. Okay, awesome, cool. Well, that has been amazing, and totally. And I hope that people will give Maastr a shot. And thanks, I don't know the final thing that I wanted to ask, but I'm sure you probably can't answer this or won't answer it. But like, is there some sort of chain or something under the hood that we can like sort of understand, or are there tools that we might even know? Is this plugins that you use there? Is this, of course you can't tell us what exactly you do, but is this something you created from scratch, or is this a mastering chain in a way? Because I've always wondered how I can like think of what is actually going on.
Yeah, so when I started prototyping, it definitely started with in a coarse manner like that, where it's just like, yeah, let's stack this type of stuff, like whatever. But at some point, you need more intelligence than that, right? So like that was sort of part of the proof of concept, but you know, we need to be able to look at a whole, like there's no plugin that is going to be able to like analyze an entire song, figure out what the loudest dynamic passage is, like you know what I mean? So like that can map the entire shape and all of that stuff. So like you're smart to think that yes, like that's a great way to get started, but I think a mature iteration of this product really needs to be very nimble and be able to like really look at everything that's going on. So for sure, some of the processes like we've been inspired by. The cool thing is like we don't have to like write GUIs and stuff, right? Because we get to process in the back end, and based on like our process is very, very fast, but you know, the front end of our process is under a minute for sure on a normal length song. It's actually the rendering of the high res file with all of our computation. That's the part that takes the most amount of time, because it's all like really high end stuff. And because we, not to get too nerdy here, but like we run all this stuff on VMs, and we have to be able to like scale those up like in parallel scaleization and all of that stuff. And we have to manage all that stuff and things spooling up and spinning down and all of that, like from a cost basis, you know, the benefit to our users for us to increase our CPU output by like 25% doesn't really make, like they don't really care. They're still getting a master in 3 or 4 minutes, and that's great for them. And then it lets us be a little bit more cost efficient on our end as well. But you know, finding that balance, like our VM costs have absolutely gone up. Like as we've like created new algorithms and we've sped up database things, and like our user base grows and we have more to manage, like our just residual cost of existing has increased. But yeah, we've got, I mean, still like company's very solvent, like we're fine. But even if I were to try to describe, I don't know that at this point I even could describe to you exactly, because it's a collaboration between myself and Joe, our CTO, and like he does all at this point. He does all like the heavy lifting with the code, and we've had other people work on the project too, and like had other devs in here and stuff like that. But you know, like how the sausage is made at this point, like we've worked together, and like the outcomes that I desire worked along with him, and there's code written that like I don't even know what it is, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that I thought that would be the answer. I was just thinking, because that would have led me to the next thing then in the future, and when you look to what's coming next, I thought that maybe if you have like, if there's some tools that you have developed happening underneath the hood or something. I thought like, well, maybe you could turn some of it into a plugin, or do other things with it and stuff like that. Yeah, but then you would have the whole GUI part, and then I think at this point you probably don't need another business.
Yeah, there's that, and yeah, I agree. So some things, and nobody take this as gospel, as it's definitely happening, but it's things that we've talked about. We've talked about creating a desktop application for Mac and PC that creates a mirrored folder structure of your Maastr account on your hard drive, so that you could just, kind of a la Dropbox, you could just drag things into certain folders and then they would upload and process. But see, then it's still not super elegant though, because then you get into things where it's like, well, what mastering settings do you want to use? What revision is this? Like, do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's much easier for us to just keep it very simple and elegant through like we can control everything. Like, you're sort of opening up Pandora's box if you're starting to create a desktop app and all of this stuff. Yeah. It's something that we've talked about a lot. And again, I like to think of the company like Apple a little bit, in the sense that's like, I feel like they're not first, but they're often very refined. And I like don't want to put stuff out that's like kind of half works and whatever. It's like anything we put out, I want to be like, oh, this is slick.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Dude, I wonder how you even have the time to do all the things that you already do. So I don't, I think anything, even if nothing new comes after that, you've done plenty at this point, and you have plenty to do at the moment. So I always wonder like how people, like, I do a lot of shit, but like running a company like that, a software company, plus producing, mixing, plus mentoring, plus having a family, plus all the things you do is pretty mind-boggling to me when I look at the volume and the output that you have. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, and I'm sure that you probably won't stop anytime soon.
Yeah, it is weird to think that like 3 years, maybe I thought of doing something like Maastr 3 years ago, but definitely 3.5 years ago, I probably hadn't had the thought yet, And then like, I'm hoping that we hold on to this company for decades, whatever it is, and we refine and we get better. So it's cool to feel like we're at a very mature phase of it now, but definitely the most mature ever. But it is weird to think like, oh, that really only was a few years ago, huh? Like, what's 2027 look like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
for sure. Yeah, I think again, these tools enable more musicians to put out more great music, and it removes one of the barriers. It removes one of the most complex and like, abstract things in a way that people never really understood anyways, a lot of them at least. And I mean, myself included, it took me forever to be able to say confidently that I can mix and I can master for other people. I was mixing and producing all of that, but it took me way longer to be able to say like, yeah, I think I know what I'm doing when I'm mastering. So this just removes that barrier, that bottleneck, and makes it accessible to a lot of people. And the result will be more great art more frequently. And I'm all for that.
That's what I think too. Yep.
Yes.
I love that.
Cool. So if people want to try this, they go to maastr.io, and then you can sign up for, I think, a free trial that you mentioned, right?
Yeah, it's not even a trial. You just make an account and start uploading stuff. And then if you want to download or whatever, or if you want more features unlocked, then you can just pick one of the plans. And like, we've got 3 plans. It's very, comparatively speaking, it's fractions, of the cost of the traditional method, and again, infinitely more convenient. So yeah, just get in there, kick the tires, upload some stuff. I think you'll really like it. And then if you want to pick up a plan, pick up whichever one you want.
Awesome. And I would encourage you to do a blind test, like a real blind test. Like try to do if you don't trust the thing, if you think other masters or your masters are better, do a blind test or a double blind test or whatever you want to do, but just make sure you really don't know what you're listening to. And I think most people will be surprised. I definitely was.
Well, that's great to hear. Sometimes I still am.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. All right, Jay, thank you so much for your time. I was a little late because my microphone was acting up, so I took up more of Jay's time than I wanted to today. Thank you so much for sticking around doing this with me. And if I get questions from the community, or if like people are still confused about something, can I just ask you, or can they get in touch? Do you have something like?
Yeah, just email me, j@maastr.io. The name of the website is funny. So it's my name. It's MAAS and then TR. Think of Tumblr, but with my name. And so it's j@maastr.io. And yeah, Maastr.io, think of Tumblr. That's our new slogan. Yeah. They can totally hit me up there if they have questions. I'm happy to walk people through things. I can direct people to videos that we have that explain everything as well too. So
awesome. Really cool of you. Great. Then enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much again for doing this. And we're looking forward to the future of Maastr and to more great records that you are working on. I know you've just been to Europe doing exciting stuff there with people, so you're still active. Looking forward to that too. And if people you're not familiar with Jay's work, just Google him, Jay Maas. You'll find where the record he's worked on. You can find his credits, and it's impressive. So,
thanks.
All right.
Awesome.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.